unstable. Sarah recognized Petra, one of the pack's favored daughters. It was custom-made in Silver City. Alpha Rider hasn't taken his eyes off her all night. Well, she's perfect for him, another girl giggled. Their bloodlines are the strongest in 3 territories. Their pups will be legendary. Sarah tightened her fingers around her cup of watered-down wine. She should have been used to such conversations. At 23, she was still unmated, still alone, still watching from the shadows as everyone else found their forever. Sarah. A gentle voice pulled her from her thoughts. She looked up to find Thomas, the pack healer, offering her a sad smile. He was old enough to be her grandfather, with kind eyes that had witnessed too much disappointment. "You shouldn't be sitting back here alone," he said softly. "Come join the others." "I'm fine here, Thomas. Really." Sarah forced cheerfulness into her voice. "I can see the ceremony better from this angle." They both knew it was a lie. Thomas sighed, patted her shoulder, and walked away. Sarah watched him leave, then turned toward the raised platform. Alpha Blackwood stood at its center, preparing to begin. He was nearly 70, ancient by wolf standards, but still commanded respect with every word. "Brothers and sisters of Moon Ridge," his voice thundered across the grounds. "Tonight, beneath the harvest moon, we gather to honor our most sacred tradition. The mating ceremony binds our pack, strengthens our bloodlines, and ensures our survival for generations to come." Sarah had heard the speech 4 times. She could recite it in her sleep. "When your name is called, step forward. The moon goddess will guide worthy alphas to choose their mates. Trust her wisdom. Trust our ways." The ceremony began. One by one, names were called. One by one, unmated females stepped onto the platform. Strong, confident alphas approached to claim them. Each successful pairing sent the unmistakable energy of a forming mate bond through the air, the sudden pull of 2 souls recognizing each other. Liana was chosen first, of course. Alpha Rider nearly bounded onto the platform, his eyes glowing gold with desire as the crowd cheered. Petra followed, paired with a visiting alpha from the Northern Ridge pack. More applause, more joy. Sarah counted 17 successful pairings before noticing how few unmated females remained. Then Alpha Blackwood called, "Sarah Thornbrook." Her name landed like a stone in still water. The chatter stopped. Every head turned toward her. Sarah rose on shaking legs and began walking toward the platform. Each step felt like moving through mud. She kept her eyes lowered because she already knew what she would see if she looked up. Pity from the elders, disgust from her peers, and awkward discomfort from everyone else. She climbed the 3 wooden steps and stood in the appointed place. To keep her hands from trembling, she clasped them tightly in front of her. Alpha Blackwood gave her a gentle look. "Sarah Thornbrook, daughter of the late Robert and Helen Thornbrook, presents herself to be chosen." Silence. Sarah counted heartbeats. 1, 2, 5, 10. No alpha moved. She'd known this would happen, known it with bone-deep certainty. But knowing didn't make the humiliation burn any less. Somewhere in the crowd, someone coughed. A child laughed at something unrelated, the sound piercing in the quiet. "Perhaps," Alpha Blackwood began, his voice heavy with sympathy. "I'll take her." The voice came from the border of the ceremony grounds, deep and rough as gravel. Every head whipped toward the sound. A figure emerged from the tree line, a man so large he seemed to dwarf the ancient oaks themselves. He stood at least 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to block out the lantern light behind him. Dark hair fell to his collar, framing a face of harsh angles and old scars. His eyes glowed amber in the darkness, fixed on Sarah with an intensity that stole her breath. The crowd parted like water before a stone. Sarah had never seen him before. Neither had anyone else, judging by the gasps and whispers erupting around her. "And you are?" Alpha Blackwood demanded, straightening to his full height. The protective authority in his voice was clear. The stranger climbed onto the platform with casual grace that belied his massive size. He moved like violence contained in flesh, like barely leashed power. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent grounds. "Darian Ashford, Alpha of the Shadow Peak Pack." He turned his gaze back to Sarah, and something flickered in those amber eyes, something she couldn't read. And I'm claiming this female as my mate. The ceremony grounds exploded into chaos. If stories like Sarah's remind you that worth isn't determined by others' rejection, subscribe to join others who believe that true strength reveals itself when we least expect it. Chapter 2. The Dangerous Lie. Shadow Peak. The name struck through the crowd like lightning. Sarah heard the whispers exploding around her, saw faces paling in the lantern light. Shadow Peak? That's the pack from the Forbidden Mountains. I heard their alpha is a savage, refuses to attend council meetings. They say he killed his own father to take the pack. Why would he come here? Why would he want her? That last question cut deepest, because Sarah was wondering the same thing. She stood frozen on the platform, staring up at the massive alpha who had just claimed her, Darian Ashford. Even his name sounded dangerous. Alpha Blackwood stepped between them, his aged face stern. Alpha Ashford, while we appreciate your interest, the mating ceremony has protocols. You cannot simply appear and claim. The ceremony allows any unmated alpha to choose an unmated female. Darian's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I've chosen, unless your traditions are merely decorative. A muscle twitched in Blackwood's jaw. The challenge was clear, deny Darian, and admit the ceremony was a sham. Accept him, and allow Sarah to be taken by a complete stranger from a pack with a brutal reputation. Sarah found her voice, though it came out smaller than she intended. I don't understand. You don't even know me. Darian's amber eyes fixed on her, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Up close, she could see the scars that marked him, one cutting through his left eyebrow, another along his jaw. His face was handsome in a harsh, unforgiving way, like a cliff face, beautiful in its danger. I know enough, he said simply. That's not an answer, Alpha Ashford. A new voice cut through the tension. Sarah's stomach dropped as Councilman Reed stepped forward, his political smile firmly in place. Reed was the pack's chief advisor, a man who valued order and tradition above all else, especially when it suited his purposes. Perhaps we should discuss this matter privately. I'm sure we can reach an understanding. Translation. A bribe. A reason to send this dangerous stranger away and avoid the complications his presence created. Darian didn't even look at him. There's nothing to discuss. I've made my choice according to your traditions. The female accepts or rejects. Those are the only two options that matter. All eyes turned to Sarah. Her mind raced. Accept a complete stranger? An alpha from a pack known for violence and isolation? It was insane. Suicidal, even. She should reject him immediately. Endure the humiliation of returning to her seat unchosen. And what? Wait another year? Endure another ceremony where no one wanted her? Watch her contemporaries raise their pups while she withered alone in her grandmother's cottage? The Runt can't seriously be considering this. Someone muttered loud enough to carry. That decided it. Sarah lifted her chin and met Darian's gaze directly. What exactly are you offering, Alpha Ashford? Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. A mate bond. A place in my pack. Protection. Why me? She pressed, needing to understand. You could have any female, stronger ones, more beautiful. I could, he agreed, cutting her off. But I'm choosing you. It wasn't an answer, but the way he said it, firm, final, allowing no argument, made her believe he meant it. Whatever his reasons, they were real to him. Alpha Blackwood leaned close to her, his voice dropping to a whisper. Child, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. Another way to what? Sarah whispered back. Watch me sit alone at next year's ceremony? And the year after that? She swallowed hard. At least this way, I'll belong somewhere. Shadow Peak is dangerous, and Moonridge has been so safe for me. The bitterness leaked through before she could stop it. Blackwood's face crumpled with guilt, and Sarah immediately regretted her words. None of this was his fault. He'd been kind to her, in his way. But kindness didn't change facts. She turned back to Darian, pulse hammering in her throat. If I accept, what happens? I just leave with you? Tonight? Yes. I'd need to pack my things. Say goodbye. Pack light. We leave within the hour. The hour. Stars above, he was serious. This was really happening. Sarah searched his face for any sign of deception, cruelty, or the mockery she'd learned to expect. But Darian's expression remained unreadable, his amber eyes steady on hers. Not cruel. Not kind. Just determined. I need one thing from you first, she said quietly. His eyebrow, the one bisected by the scar, lifted slightly. Name it. The truth. Why are you really doing this? For a long moment, Darian said nothing. The ceremony grounds had gone silent again, everyone straining to hear. Then he leaned down, his face close enough that only she could hear his next words. Because I need a mate before the autumn council. And you need someone to choose you. We both get what we need. That's the truth. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't even particularly kind, but it was honest, and somehow that mattered more than pretty lies. One more question, Sarah breathed. Are you going to hurt me? Something shifted in Darian's expression, a crack in that stone facade. No, he said, and this time there was something almost gentle in his voice. I'm going to protect you, even from my own pack, if necessary. Especially from my own pack, his tone seemed to say. Sarah took a shaking breath. This was madness, complete and utter madness. But sitting alone at ceremonies year after year, watching life pass her by, that was a different kind of madness, wasn't it? Then I accept. The words fell into stunned silence. Then, chaos erupted for the second time that night. Voices shouted over each other, protests from the council, gasps from the crowd, cries of disbelief. Someone was demanding a formal challenge. Someone else was invoking ancient protocols. Darian ignored all of it. He pulled a ring from his pocket, a simple band of dark metal, etched with symbols Sarah didn't recognize, and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm against her cold fingers. Sarah Thornbrook, he said, his voice cutting through the noise with alpha command. I claim you as my mate before the moon goddess and these witnesses. Do you accept this bond? The formal words, the binding words. Once spoken, once accepted, the bond would begin to form. Not the instant, electric snap of true mates, but the slower, deliberate building of a chosen bond, just as permanent, just as sacred. Sarah's grandmother had told her that chosen bonds could become just as strong as fated ones, given time and care. She'd said love grew where it was tended. Sarah hoped she was right. I accept this bond, she whispered. Darian slid the ring onto her finger. It was too large, hanging loose, but the metal warmed against her skin like it was alive. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so at odds with his brutal appearance that Sarah's breath caught. Then it's done, he said. You're mine now, and I'm yours. The mate bond sparked to life between them, not overwhelming, not all-consuming, but real. A thread of connection, thin but growing stronger with each passing second. Sarah felt it settle somewhere deep in her chest, warm and strange and terrifying. She was mated to a complete stranger, who was already turning to face the angry crowd with her hand still held in his. We're leaving, Darian announced. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me now. No one moved. Whatever Shadow Peak's reputation, Darian's physical presence alone was enough to give even the bravest alphas pause. He was massive, scarred, and moved with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight. Sarah needs time to gather her belongings. Alpha Blackwood tried. 30 minutes, Darian conceded. Then we're gone. He finally released Sarah's hand and gave her a slight nod toward the crowd. Go, pack what matters. I'll wait here. Sarah stumbled down the platform steps, her legs barely holding her. The crowd parted around her, some in shock, some in pity, some in barely concealed relief that the runt was finally someone else's problem. Liana caught her arm as she passed. Sarah, this is insane. You can't actually leave with him. Why not? Sarah pulled free, surprising herself with the sharpness in her voice. You got your perfect alpha. Let me have mine. Even if he was far from perfect. Even if this was a transaction more than a romance. Even if she was absolutely terrified of what came next. She pushed through the crowd and ran for her grandmother's cottage on the edge of Packlands, her new ring catching moonlight as she fled. Behind her, she could feel Darian's presence through the fresh bond, steady, solid, waiting. 30 minutes to pack up a life. 30 minutes before everything changed. Sarah prayed she wasn't making the biggest mistake of her existence. Chapter 3. The Departure. The cottage was dark when Sarah burst through the door, her hands shaking so badly she could barely light the oil lamp. Golden light flooded the small space, the only home she'd ever known. One room that served as kitchen, bedroom, and living space. Her grandmother's rocking chair by the cold fireplace, herbs hanging from the rafters, the narrow bed in the corner where Sarah had slept every night of her 23 years. 30 minutes to say goodbye to all of it. She grabbed her travel pack from the hook by the door and started throwing things inside with no thought to organization. Clothes, her 2 other dresses, a spare shift, wool stockings for winter, her grandmother's recipe book, the pages yellowed and stained with use, the carved wooden wolf her father had made before he died, small enough to fit in her palm. What did you pack when leaving forever? Sarah? She spun to find Thomas standing in the doorway, slightly out of breath. He must have run after her from the ceremony. Thomas, I can't. I don't have time. I know. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. His healer's bag hung from his shoulder. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to help. Sarah's eyes burned with sudden tears. You think I'm insane. I think you're brave. He moved to her small shelf of belongings and started pulling down items with practiced efficiency. A hairbrush, a small sewing kit, a tin of salve for wounds. Darian Ashford has a brutal reputation, yes. But I've also heard he's fair, protective of his pack. If he's claimed you, he'll honor that bond. He doesn't want me, Sarah whispered, the truth spilling out. He needs a mate for some political reason. The Autumn Council, he said. This isn't about me at all. Thomas paused, meeting her eyes. Then make it about you. You're cleverer than any wolf in this pack gives you credit for. You've survived being unwanted your entire life. That takes a strength most will never understand. He pressed the items into her hands. Use that strength now. Show Shadow Peak what Moonridge was too blind to see. What if I can't? The fear finally broke through. What if I'm just as weak as everyone thinks? You're not weak. You're a late bloomer. Thomas gripped her shoulders firmly. Your grandmother knew it. I know it. Someday, that wolf inside you is going to emerge. And when it does, Sarah, you're going to be magnificent. Sarah wanted to believe him. She'd spent years waiting for her wolf to fully manifest. For the strength that was supposed to come with maturity. But at 23, still barely able to shift, still the smallest wolf in any room, hope felt like another cruel joke. Still, she nodded and continued packing. Thomas helped her gather the essentials: food for the journey, a water skin, a warm cloak. He added packets of herbs from his own bag. Valerian for sleep. Willow bark for pain. Yarrow for wounds. His voice dropped. And pennyroyal in case. In case you need to prevent. Thomas. Sarah's cheeks burned. I'm a healer. It's my job to prepare you for every possibility. His expression was grave. I don't think Darian will force himself on you, but you're going into an unknown pack with an unknown alpha. Better to have options. The reality of her situation crashed over her again. She was leaving with a stranger. To a pack known for violence. Where she'd have no allies, no protection, except from the very male who might become her greatest threat. I'm terrified, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you alert. Thomas tied her pack closed. But don't let it paralyze you. Remember, you're not powerless. You have a mind sharper than most, a healer's knowledge from helping your grandmother, and now a mate bond to an alpha. Those are weapons, if you're clever enough to use them. A knock at the door made them both jump. It's time. Darian's deep voice carried through the wood. Sarah's heart lurched. She looked around the cottage one last time, memorizing every detail. The water stain on the ceiling shaped like a bird. The loose floorboard that creaked by the fireplace. The window that never quite closed all the way, letting in winter drafts. I wish grandmother was here, she whispered. She'd know what to do. She'd tell you to trust yourself. Thomas pulled her into a quick embrace. Write to me if you can. Let me know you're safe. I will. Another knock. More insistent. Sarah shouldered her pack, pulled her cloak around her shoulders, and opened the door. Darian stood on the threshold, somehow looking even larger in the confined space of the cottage grounds. Behind him, she could see torches from the ceremony grounds, the pack gathering to watch her leave. Of course they'd want to witness this spectacle. Ready? Darian asked. No, not even remotely, but Sarah nodded anyway. Darian's eyes flicked to Thomas, something unreadable passing over his face. Then he reached out and took Sarah's pack from her shoulder, slinging it over his own like it weighed nothing. Say your goodbyes. We have a long journey ahead. The walk back to the ceremony grounds felt like a death march. Wolves lined the path, some whispering, some staring openly. Sarah kept her chin up through sheer force of will. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her crumble. Alpha Blackwood waited at the edge of pack territory, his expression troubled. Sarah, child, if you've changed your mind. I haven't. Then may the moon goddess guide your path. He pressed a small pouch into her hands. Coin. Not much, but enough to get you home if you need it. The kindness nearly broke her. Thank you, Alpha. Councilman Reed stood nearby, his arms crossed. This is highly irregular. The council should have been consulted. The council can file a complaint with Shadow Peak. Darian cut him off. His hand settled on the small of Sarah's back. Warm, possessive, protective. My mate and I are leaving now. My mate. The words sent a shiver through her. For better or worse. That's what she was now. Darian guided her past the crowd, past the gawking faces and whispered speculation. At the tree line where pack territory ended, he paused and turned to face her. Last chance, he said quietly. If you're going to run, do it now. Once we cross into neutral territory, you're committed. Sarah looked back at Moonridge. At the ceremony grounds where she'd sat alone so many times. At the faces of wolves who'd never truly seen her. At Thomas, who gave her an encouraging nod from the crowd. At Leanna, who looked genuinely worried, despite everything. Then she looked up at Darian, this scarred, brutal stranger who'd chosen her when no one else would. I'm not running, she said. Something that might have been respect flickered in his eyes. Then stay close. The neutral territory between packs isn't safe after dark. He shifted then, and Sarah's breath caught. His wolf was massive, easily twice the size of any alpha she'd ever seen. Dark gray fur shot through with black. Shoulders corded with muscle, eyes glowing amber in the darkness. He was built for battle, for dominance, for violence barely contained. He lowered himself slightly, an invitation. Sarah's wolf was too small, too weak to make the journey in shifted form. She'd have to ride. Pride warred with practicality. Pride lost. She climbed onto his back, gripping his fur tightly. The moment she settled, Darian stood and launched into the forest at a ground-eating lope. Sarah held on for dear life, the world blurring around them. Behind them, Moonridge faded into the distance. Ahead lay the unknown, and pressed against Darian's powerful form, feeling the mate bond pulse with each stride. Sarah realized with sudden clarity that she'd traded one form of danger for another. She just prayed this danger might actually keep her alive. They ran for hours. The forest changed around them from the familiar oak groves of Moonridge territory, through the neutral wildlands, and into darker, wilder woods Sarah had never seen. The trees grew taller, their branches blocking out the moonlight. The underbrush thickened. Even the air felt different, heavier, charged with ancient power. Shadow Peak territory. Darian finally slowed near a stream, his sides heaving slightly. He shifted back to human form, and Sarah quickly averted her eyes before sliding off his back. Pack wolves were used to nudity shifting destroyed clothes, unless you learned to undress first, but she and Darian were still strangers. It felt too intimate. She heard rustling as he dressed in the spare clothes he'd apparently stashed in her pack. When she looked back, he was decent loose trousers, and a shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders. We rest here for an hour, he said, his voice rough from the run. Drink, eat if you need to. Then we continue. Sarah knelt by the stream and cupped water to her lips. The cold shocked her system, chasing away some of the fog of exhaustion. "How much further?" she asked. 3 more hours at full speed. We'll reach Shadow Peak by dawn." Dawn. Then this strange new life would truly begin. Sarah settled against a tree trunk, pulling her cloak tight against the chill. Darian stood watch nearby, alert and tense. Even resting, he looked ready for battle. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah ventured after a moment of silence. "You can ask. I may not answer." "Fair enough. Earlier, you said you needed a mate before the Autumn Council. Why?" Darian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, pack law, an alpha must be mated to hold their position beyond age 30. "I turned 30 in 2 months. Understanding dawned. "So if you didn't find a mate, the council could challenge my right to lead, force me to step down or fight every male who thinks they could do better." His jaw clenched. "I've held Shadow Peak for 8 years, rebuilt it from the ruins my father left. I'm not surrendering it to some ambitious fool because of an outdated law. So you needed any mate, and I was. Convenient. You were willing." He turned to look at her directly. "Don't underestimate the value of that. I don't have time for courtship or political games. You needed chosen. I needed a mate. We helped each other. It was brutally practical, unromantic. But at least it was honest. What should I expect when we arrive?" Sarah asked. "Your pack, will they accept me?" Darian's laugh was harsh. "No. They'll hate you on principle because you're weak and from a foreign pack. They'll test you, push you, try to force you into submission or drive you away." Sarah's stomach dropped. "That's not encouraging. I'm not here to coddle you with pretty lies." He crossed his arms. "Shadow Peak isn't like Moonridge. We don't have ceremonies and traditions. We have survival. The strong protect the weak, but they don't tolerate uselessness." "I'm not useless," Sarah said, anger sparking. "Then prove it." His amber eyes pinned her. "That's what you'll have to do every single day. Prove you deserve to be there. Prove you're more than the runt everyone sees." "And what about you?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Will you protect me or just throw me to the wolves?" "I'll protect you from real danger, but I won't shield you from every challenge." Darian's expression was hard. "If I do, they'll never respect you, never see you as anything but my burden. You want to survive Shadow Peak? You'll have to fight for your place." It was the opposite of everything Sarah had hoped for. No gentle introduction. No gradual acceptance. Just trial by fire. "I don't know if I can do this," she admitted quietly. "You can. You already chose to. That takes courage most wolves don't have." Darian pushed off the tree he'd been leaning against. "Rest now. We leave in 30 minutes. He walked to the other side of the clearing, giving her space, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts and the growing weight of what she'd agreed to. Sarah touched the ring on her finger, too large, too heavy, too real. She'd wanted to be chosen, to matter to someone. "Careful what you wish for," her grandmother's voice whispered in memory, because now she belonged to the most dangerous alpha in 3 territories, was heading to a pack that would hate her, and had no idea if she was strong enough to survive what came next. But as Sarah looked up at the unfamiliar stars, through the canopy of strange trees, one thought burned bright. She'd been unwanted for so long that even danger and uncertainty, and a mate who'd chosen her for politics felt like a chance at something more, and she'd be damned if she wasted it. Chapter 4. Shadow Peak. Dawn broke gray and cold over Shadow Peak territory. Sarah saw the packlands long before they reached them, a valley carved between 2 mountain peaks, shrouded in perpetual mist. Where Moonridge had been open meadows and gentle hills, Shadow Peak was all sharp edges and shadows. Dark pine forests climbed the mountainsides. Stone outcroppings jutted from the earth like broken teeth. Even the air tasted different here, wilder, heavier with ancient power. Darian shifted back to human form at the valley's edge, dressing quickly while Sarah climbed down on trembling legs. 3 hours of riding had left her sore and exhausted, but she forced herself to stand straight. First impressions mattered, even when you were too tired to think. "Stay close," Darian said, shouldering her pack again. "Don't make eye contact with anyone unless I tell you to. Don't speak unless spoken to directly." And whatever happens, don't show fear. That's a lot of don'ts, Sarah muttered. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. Welcome to Shadow Peak. They walked down into the valley as the sun crept higher, burning away some of the mist. The pack settlement came into view gradually, not the neat cottages and communal buildings of Moonridge, but a sprawling collection of structures that looked like they'd grown organically from the land itself. Stone houses built into hillsides, wooden longhouses with smoke curling from their chimneys. Training yards where even now, in the early morning light, wolves sparred with brutal efficiency, and everywhere wolves, dozens of them, all turning to stare as Darian and Sarah entered the settlement. The whispers started immediately. Is that her? She's tiny. He actually went through with it. Look at her, she can barely stand. Sarah kept her eyes forward and her chin up, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. These wolves were different from Moonridge Pack, harder, scarred. Every single one looked like they could kill her without breaking a sweat. Darian's hand found the small of her back again, that now familiar gesture of possession and protection. The mate bond pulsed between them, offering a thread of comfort in the sea of hostile stares. They walked through the settlement to a large stone building at its heart. The pack house, Sarah realized. Where the Alpha lived. Where she would live now. A woman waited on the steps, tall, powerful, with silvery blonde hair pulled back in a severe braid. She wore leather training gear and had the build of a warrior. Her ice blue eyes swept over Sarah with open disdain. So this is the famous mate, the woman said, her voice dripping with contempt. Darian, you could have at least chosen someone who looks like she could survive a week here. Kara. Darian's voice held a warning. Where's the council? Waiting in the great hall. They're not happy. Kara's eyes never left Sarah. Neither is anyone else. You left for a mate and came back with this. Sarah felt her face flush. Anger battling with humiliation. But she remembered Darian's warning, don't show fear. She met Kara's gaze directly. I have a name, Sarah said quietly. It's Sarah, and I'm stronger than I look. Kara laughed sharp and cruel. We'll see about that. She turned to Darian. The council wants to see her. Now. They're invoking the right of assessment. Something dark crossed Darian's face. Of course they are. What's the right of assessment? Sarah asked, though she had a sinking feeling she didn't want to know. Pack law, Kara answered before Darian could. When an alpha brings a new mate into the pack, the council can assess whether she's worthy. Test her strength, her knowledge, her value to the pack. Her smile was predatory. Most fail. Most don't have an alpha willing to fight for them, Darian said coldly. Take us to the council. Let's get this over with. He guided Sarah into the pack house, through corridors lit by torches and lined with weapons on the walls. Everything here spoke of warfare, of survival, of strength as the only currency that mattered. The great hall was exactly what Sarah expected. Massive, austere, dominated by a long table where 5 wolves sat in judgment. 3 men, 2 women, all older and radiating authority. The council that governed Shadow Peak alongside their alpha. They stood as Darian entered, showing respect for his position, but their eyes on Sarah held nothing but skepticism. Alpha Darian, the eldest man, spoke gray-haired and scarred across half his face. Welcome home. We heard rumors you'd found a mate at Moonridge. Not rumors, fact. Darian pulled Sarah forward gently. This is Sarah Thornbrook, my chosen mate. She's under my protection and entitled to all the rights of an alpha's mate. If she's worthy, one of the women said. She was middle-aged, with sharp features and calculating eyes. The council invokes the right of assessment. We must know what she brings to Shadow Peak. She brings herself. That's enough. No, the scarred man said firmly. It's not. You know our ways, Darian. You've led this pack back from the brink, but you did it by enforcing our laws. You can't ignore them now because they're inconvenient. Darian's jaw clenched. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Sarah stepped forward before she could second-guess herself. What does the assessment involve? 5 pairs of eyes fixed on her with surprise, apparently. They hadn't expected her to speak. The scarred man leaned back in his chair, studying her. 3 trials over 3 days. Combat, knowledge, endurance. Pass all 3, and you're accepted as one of us. Fail even 1, he shrugged. You leave Shadow Peak. The mate bond dissolves. That's not how mate bonds work, Sarah protested. Once formed, they can be severed if both parties agree, or if the council rules the bond invalid. The calculating woman smiled without warmth. We've done it before. We can do it again. Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. She'd thought the bond was permanent, sacred. But apparently in Shadow Peak, even that could be taken away. This is ridiculous, Darian said, his voice hard as stone. She just arrived. She needs time to rest, to adjust. She needs to prove herself. The scarred man interrupted. Just like every other wolf in this pack has had to. You taught us that. Alpha. No exceptions. No special treatment. Strength earns respect. Darian looked like he wanted to argue further, but Sarah could see the trap. If he fought too hard for her, he'd undermine his own authority, prove that he gave special treatment to his mate while demanding that everyone else earn their place. I'll do it, Sarah said quietly. Sarah, I'll do the assessment. She looked up at Darian, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. You said I'd have to prove myself every day. Might as well start now. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe even admiration. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She turned back to the council. When do we start? The scarred man smiled, a genuine smile this time, though no less dangerous. I like her spirit, Darian. Let's see if she has anything else. He stood, the other council members following suit. The first trial begins at noon. Combat. You'll face one of our wolves in the training yard. Not to death, he added, seeing Darian's expression darken, but to submission or unconsciousness. Standard dominance fight. Sarah's stomach dropped. Combat. Against wolves who'd been training their entire lives to be warriors. Against opponents who probably outweighed her by 50 pounds. She was going to lose. They all knew it. But if she didn't at least try, if she backed down now, she'd be admitting defeat before she even began. I understand, she managed. Good. The calculating woman's eyes gleamed. I suggest you spend the next few hours preparing. You're going to need it. The council filed out, leaving Sarah and Darian alone in the great hall. The moment they were gone, Darian rounded on her. You didn't have to agree to this. What choice did I have? Say no and prove I'm too weak to be here. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. At least this way, I have a chance. You have no chance. Darian's words were brutal in their honesty. Not in combat, you know that. Then why did you bring me here? The question exploded out of her, weeks of frustration and fear finally breaking through. You knew what your pack was like. You knew they'd test me. Why choose me at all if you knew I'd fail? Darian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Because I thought I could protect you, shield you from the worst of it until you found your footing. He shook his head. I underestimated how much the council resents me choosing an outsider. They want me to fail. Yes, at least he was honest. Sarah sank onto a bench, exhaustion and despair washing over her. I should have stayed in Moonridge, should have just accepted being alone. You could still go back. Darian sat beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. I could escort you to the border, tell the council the bond didn't take. You'd be free. Freedom. Back to her grandmother's cottage. Back to sitting alone at ceremonies. Back to being invisible and unwanted and slowly withering away. Or forward. Into danger and trials she'd likely fail, but at least trying. At least fighting. No, Sarah said finally. I'm staying. I'm doing this. Why? She looked up at him, this brutal, scarred alpha who'd chosen her for all the wrong reasons but hadn't lied to her once. Because for the first time in my life, someone chose me. Even if it was just for politics. Even if you need me more than want me. She touched the too large ring on her finger. That means something. And I'm not throwing it away without a fight. Darian's expression shifted, something almost like respect warming those cold amber eyes. Then we have 4 hours to prepare you. He stood, offering his hand. Come on. If you're going to lose anyway, let's make sure you lose with honor. It wasn't encouraging, but somehow, it was exactly what Sarah needed to hear. She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. 4 hours to prepare for a fight she couldn't win. 4 hours to prove she was more than the runt everyone saw. 4 hours before her new life truly began or ended. Sarah just hoped she'd survive long enough to find out which. Chapter 5. The first trial. The training yard was packed. Word had spread fast, the new alpha's mate, the weak runt from Moonridge, was going to fight. Every wolf in Shadow Peak who could walk had gathered to watch what promised to be a spectacular humiliation. Sarah stood at the edge of the yard, trying to control her breathing. 4 hours of preparation with Darian had taught her exactly one thing. She was hopelessly outmatched. He'd shown her basic defensive stances, how to protect her throat and belly, how to fall without breaking bones. All necessary skills when you knew you were going to lose. He hadn't tried to teach her offense. There was no point. Remember, Darian said quietly beside her. Survive as long as you can. Show courage. That matters more than winning. Easy for him to say. He'd probably never lost a fight in his life. The scarred council member Sarah had learned his name was Garrett stepped into the center of the yard. His voice boomed across the gathered crowd. By pack law, and the right of assessment, Sarah Thornbrook will face trial by combat. The fight continues until submission, unconsciousness, or... He paused. Death. Though we prefer the first two options. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Her opponent today is Kara Steelclaw, our pack's head warrior. Of course it was Kara. The silver-haired woman who'd looked at Sarah like something she'd scrape off her boot. Kara stepped into the yard, already stripped down to fighting leathers, her muscles coiled and ready. She looked like a war goddess, beautiful, deadly, absolutely merciless. Sarah suddenly wanted to vomit. Shift and fight, or fight as human, Garrett continued. Your choice, Sarah Thornbrook. Shifting meant revealing just how pathetically small her wolf was. Fighting as human meant facing a trained warrior with nothing but the basic moves Darian had frantically taught her that morning. She chose human. At least that way, the humiliation would be slightly less visible. Sarah walked into the center of the yard on shaking legs. The crowd pressed closer, their excitement palpable. Blood sport had always drawn crowds, and she was today's entertainment. Kara circled her slowly, predatory. Last chance to run back to Moonridge, little runt. I'm not running. Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt. Pity. Kara smiled. I was hoping you'd make this interesting. Garrett raised his hand. Fight begins on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Kara moved like lightning. Sarah barely had time to raise her arms before the first hit connected a brutal punch to her ribs that drove the air from her lungs. She staggered back, gasping, and Kara was already there with a kick that swept her legs out from under her. Sarah hit the ground hard, dust filling her mouth. The crowd roared. Get up! Get up! Get up! She rolled to the side just as Kara's boot slammed down where her head had been. Scrambled to her feet, arms up in the defensive stance Darian had shown her. Block the throat. Protect the belly. Kara came at her again, a flurry of strikes that Sarah could barely track, let alone block. Fists and elbows and knees, each one landing with brutal precision. Sarah's arms took most of the damage, but enough got through that she tasted blood. Is this all you've got? Kara taunted. Pathetic. The crowd was chanting now Kara's name, over and over. Sarah caught a glimpse of Darian at the edge of the yard, his face carved from stone. He wasn't going to intervene. Couldn't, without undermining everything. She was alone in this. Kara grabbed Sarah's arm and twisted, sending her crashing to the ground again. This time, Kara followed her down, knee pressing into Sarah's spine, hand fisting in her hair to wrench her head back, exposing her throat. Submit, Kara growled. Make this easier on yourself. Every instinct screamed at Sarah to give in, to end this torture. She was going to lose anyway, why prolong the agony? But then she saw them. The faces in the crowd, the satisfaction, the smugness, the absolute certainty that she was weak, worthless, exactly what they'd expected. And something in Sarah cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like ice under pressure, revealing something harder beneath. She remembered every ceremony where she'd sat alone, every dismissive glance, every whispered insult, every moment of being invisible, unwanted, less than. "No," Sarah gasped out. "What?" I said no. With strength she didn't know she possessed. Sarah twisted in Kara's grip, not breaking free, but shifting just enough to get her elbow into Kara's ribs. It wasn't much. Barely made Kara grunt, but it was enough to loosen her hold for a fraction of a second. Sarah rolled, kicking out wildly. Her foot connected with something Kara's shin, and then she was scrambling away, putting distance between them. The crowd had gone quiet. Sarah stood, swaying, blood dripping from her split lip. Every part of her body screamed in pain, but she raised her fists again. "I'm not submitting," she said clearly. Kara's expression shifted surprise, giving way to something that might have been respect, or might have been anger at being denied an easy victory. "Your funeral," Kara said. She attacked again, but this time Sarah was ready, not skilled enough to win, but determined enough to make it cost something. She blocked what she could, rolled with the hits she couldn't avoid, and refused to stay down. Again and again, Kara put her on the ground. Again and again, Sarah got back up. The crowd's bloodlust shifted to something else, a kind of horrified fascination. This wasn't supposed to happen. The runt was supposed to break quickly, submit like any sensible wolf outmatched by a superior opponent. But Sarah kept getting up. "Stay down," Kara snarled, frustration leaking through her controlled demeanor. "Make me." Sarah spat blood into the dust. They clashed again. This time, when Kara reached for her, Sarah remembered something Thomas had taught her years ago when dealing with aggressive patients used their momentum against them. She didn't try to block Kara's charge. Instead, she dropped and rolled, letting Kara's own force carry her past. Kara stumbled, caught off guard. It gave Sarah 3 precious seconds. 3 seconds to breathe, to think, to go. Kara's fist caught her in the temple, and the world exploded into stars. Sarah felt herself falling, the ground rushing up. This time, she didn't have the strength to rise. Her vision blurred, doubled. She could hear the crowd's roar like it was coming from underwater. Kara's boot pressed against her throat, not choking, but dominant. The classic submission pose. "Submit," Kara demanded. "Now." Sarah's mouth moved, trying to form the words. She should submit. It was over. She'd lost. Continuing would just mean more pain. But through her blurred vision, she saw Darian. Saw something in his expression, not disappointment, not pity, pride. She'd lost the fight. But she hadn't lost herself. Sarah gasped against the pressure on her throat. "I submit." The words tasted like ash, but they were necessary. Fighting to unconsciousness would prove nothing except stubbornness. Kara immediately removed her boot and stepped back. The crowd erupted, some disappointed at the lack of bloodshed, others impressed despite themselves. Garrett's voice cut through the noise. Trial by combat failed, but... He paused, and Sarah saw him exchange a glance with the other council members. Sarah Thornbrook showed courage in the face of certain defeat. She has earned the right to attempt the second trial. Sarah lay in the dust, too exhausted to feel relief. She'd failed, just like everyone expected. The fact that she'd made it slightly less pathetic than anticipated didn't change the outcome. Hands gripped her arms, Darian, lifting her carefully. She wanted to tell him she could walk, but her legs weren't cooperating. He carried her from the training yard without a word, the crowd parting around them. Behind them, she heard voices. "Did you see how many times she got back up?" Kara actually had to work for it. Still lost, though. "Yeah, but... Did you see?" Darian carried her into the pack house, upstairs that made her head spin, into a room she barely registered. He laid her on a bed soft, impossibly soft after the hard-packed earth of the training yard. "Stay still," he ordered. "I'll get the healer." "Wait." Sarah caught his arm with trembling fingers. Was it completely pathetic? Darian looked down at her, and for the first time, she saw his expression soften. "No, it was brave. Foolish, but brave. I lost. I lost. You lost with honor. In Shadow Peak, that matters." He gently removed her hand from his arm. "Rest now. You have 2 more trials ahead. 2 more chances to fail." 2 more public humiliations. But as Sarah's eyes drifted closed, she realized something. She'd gotten back up. Again and again. She'd risen when everything in her screamed to stay down. Maybe that was worth something after all. The healer was an elderly woman named Mira, with gentle hands and sharp eyes. She tutted over Sarah's injuries, cracked ribs, extensive bruising. That split lip, possible concussion while applying salves that smelled of pine and something bitter. "You're lucky Kara pulled her punches," Mira said, wrapping Sarah's ribs with practiced efficiency. "She could have broken you in half." She pulled her punches? Sarah couldn't imagine what the fight would have been like at full strength. Toward the end, yes. After you kept getting up, she stopped trying to destroy you and started trying to make you submit. Mira's eyes crinkled. Take it as the compliment it was meant to be. Darian stood by the window, silent. He'd been there the entire time Mira worked, watching with that unreadable expression. "The second trial is tomorrow?" Sarah asked, wincing as Mira pressed something cold against her bruised face. "Day after tomorrow," Darian corrected. "You need time to recover. The council agreed to give you 2 days between trials. Small mercies." "What's the second trial?" Sarah asked. "Knowledge," Garrett said. "Yes. They'll test your understanding of pack law, healing, history, survival skills." Darian turned from the window. "It's oral examination before the full pack. You'll answer questions until they're satisfied, or until you fail to answer correctly 3 times. So the opposite of the physical trial, this one would test her mind. Her one actual strength. "I can do that," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. "Don't underestimate it," Mira warned, finishing her wrapping. "The council will ask obscure questions, trick questions. They're trying to eliminate you, remember? They won't make it easy." "Nothing here is easy," Sarah muttered. Mira patted her hand. "No. But you're still here. That's more than most outsiders can say." She gathered her supplies. "Rest, eat, heal. You'll need your strength." After she left, silence filled the room. Sarah stared at the ceiling, dark wood beams, so different from her grandmother's cottage, and tried not to think about how much everything hurt. "You fought well," Darian said finally. "I lost." "You fought well," he repeated, emphasis on each word. "The pack saw that. They're talking about you now, not about how weak you are, but about how you refuse to quit. That matters. Does it matter enough?" Sarah turned her head to look at him, ignoring the spike of pain. "Will they accept me if I fail the other trials?" Darian's expression closed off again. "I don't know. Honest to the end." Sarah closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling at her. "Thank you for being honest. Everyone else just lies to make people feel better. I'm not everyone else." "No, you're really not." She felt the bed dip as Darian sat on the edge, not close, maintaining proper distance, but present. "The mate bond," he said quietly. "Can you feel it?" Sarah searched inside herself, past the pain and fear, to that thread of connection. It was stronger than before, pulsing steadily like a second heartbeat. "Yes, it's supposed to be uncomfortable if we're too far apart for too long. That's why I stayed during the healing." He stood. "I'll be in the next room if you need anything. Rest now." He moved toward the door. "Darian?" He paused, looking back. Why did Kara pull her punches at the end? For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because even Shadow Peak's hardest warriors respect courage. "You showed her something unexpected." She responded in kind. "Will that be enough for the pack to accept me?" "I don't know," he said again. "But it's a start." He left, closing the door softly behind him. Sarah lay in the darkness, cataloging her injuries, her failures, her small victories. She'd survived day 1 in Shadow Peak, barely, painfully, but she'd survived. 2 more trials ahead. 2 more chances to prove herself or fail completely. Through the window, she could hear the pack settling in for the night voices, laughter, the sounds of a community she desperately wanted to belong to but had no idea how to reach. The ring on her finger caught moonlight, still too large, still foreign, but slightly less so than yesterday. Sarah closed her eyes and let exhaustion claim her, hoping that tomorrow would bring clarity along with the inevitable pain. In the room next door, Darian sat awake, listening to his mate's breathing slow into sleep, and wondering if he'd made a terrible mistake or the best decision of his life. Time would tell. It always did. Chapter 6. The Second Trial. 2 days passed in a blur of pain and preparation. Sarah spent the first day barely able to move, her body one massive bruise. Mira visited twice daily with fresh salves and stern instructions to rest. Darian brought her meals simple but nourishing and stayed long enough to ensure she ate, then disappeared to handle pack business. The second day, Sarah forced herself out of bed. She couldn't afford to rest when the knowledge trial loomed. She spent hours with a stack of books Darian had brought her, histories of Shadow Peak, guides to pack law, healing texts that made her head spin with their complexity. "You can't memorize everything in 2 days," Darian said, watching her from the doorway as she pored over yet another dense volume. "Then I'll memorize what I can and improvise the rest." Sarah didn't look up from the page, detailing ancient territorial disputes. "Knowledge is the one thing I might actually be good at. The council knows that. They'll try to catch you off guard. Let them try." She felt his approval through the mate bond before he spoke. "You're different than you were in Moonridge." "I'm the same person. Just..." Sarah finally looked up, meeting his eyes. "I have something to fight for now, even if it's just proving I'm not completely useless." "You were never useless, just underestimated." Darian stepped into the room fully, including by yourself. The words settled something in Sarah's chest, a small, warm validation she hadn't realized she needed. "Tell me about the council," she said, changing the subject before emotions could overwhelm her. "Who should I worry about most?" Darian settled into the chair across from her. "Garrett, you know, head of the council, former alpha, before he stepped down to let me lead. He's fair but rigid about tradition. If you show strength, he'll respect it. And the woman? The one with the calculating eyes? Helena. She's the most dangerous." Darian's expression darkened. "She wanted her daughter to be my mate. When I chose you instead, she took it personally. She'll do everything in her power to see you fail." Sarah's stomach tightened. "Great. An enemy on the council. The other 3 are less invested. Rowan handles pack finances, he cares more about numbers than politics. Isla manages territory disputes, she's practical above all else. And Thomas..." "Wait, Thomas?" Sarah interrupted. "Like the healer from Moonridge? Different Thomas. Thomas Ironwood, our weapons master. He's quiet but observant. Hard to read." So she had one definite enemy, one potential ally in Garrett, if she proved herself, and 3 unknowns. Not the worst odds, but not comforting either. What kind of questions will they ask? Darian leaned back, considering. "Pack law, definitely. Helena will probably ask about mating traditions and alpha succession, trying to catch you admitting you're not qualified to be an alpha's mate. Garrett might focus on Shadow Peak history, testing your commitment to learning about your new pack. And the others? Could be anything. Healing, hunting, territorial law, combat strategy despite your obvious weakness in that area." He paused. "The key is to answer confidently even when you're not certain. Uncertainty reads as weakness here." Sarah nodded, making mental notes. "How long does the trial usually last?" "Until they're satisfied, or until you fail 3 questions. Could be an hour, could be 3. His eyes held hers. "Pace yourself. Don't let them rattle you." Easier said than done, but Sarah appreciated the advice. That night, she dreamed of questions with no answers, of standing before a crowd that laughed as she fumbled for words. She woke before dawn, heart racing, and spent the remaining hours reviewing everything she'd learned, until the words blurred together. When the sun finally rose, Sarah dressed carefully in the simple but clean clothes Darian had provided. She braided her hair back tightly, leaving her face exposed. No hiding today. "Ready?" Darian asked when she emerged from the bedroom. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." His mouth quirked that almost smile again. "That's becoming your motto. Could be worse ones." They walked to the great hall together, Sarah's heart pounding with each step. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now after 2 days of proximity. It wasn't love, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was connection. Solidarity. She wasn't completely alone. The great hall was packed even fuller than the training yard had been. Apparently knowledge trials were just as entertaining as combat. The council sat at their long table, elevated slightly so they could look down on whoever stood before them. Sarah saw Helena's satisfied smirk and felt her resolve harden. She would not give that woman the satisfaction of watching her crumble. Garrett stood as Sarah approached. "Sarah Thornbrook, you have passed the first trial through demonstration of courage. Today, you face the second trial, knowledge. You will answer questions about pack law, history, survival, and any other topic the council deems relevant. 3 failures mean elimination. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Then let us begin." Garrett sat, and Helena immediately leaned forward. "First question," Helena said, her voice sharp. "Recite the 3 primary laws of pack hierarchy." Easy. Sarah had memorized these on day 1. First law, the alpha's word is absolute in matters of pack security and survival. Second law, strength earns rank, but rank carries responsibility to protect those beneath you. Third law, challenge for position must be witnessed and fought fairly, or the challenger is exiled. Helena's smile tightened. Correct. Second question, what are the grounds for dissolving a mate bond? Here was the trap. Helena wanted her to admit there were legitimate reasons to dissolve Sarah's bond with Darian. According to ancient law, a mate bond can be dissolved only through mutual agreement of both parties. Death of one party, or council ruling in cases of severe harm, betrayal, or proven incompatibility that threatens pack stability. Sarah kept her voice steady. However, council rulings on bond dissolution are rare and require unanimous vote, as interfering with mate bonds is considered a grave action against the moon goddess's will. She'd added that last part from a footnote in one of the older texts. Helena's expression soured. Clearly she'd hoped Sarah wouldn't know about the unanimous vote requirement. Correct, Helena bit out. Garrett took the next question. Name the 3 territories that border Shadow Peak, and the treaties that govern our relationships with them. Sarah drew on the history she'd absorbed. To the north, the Frostbite Pack under Alpha Kale. We have a non-aggression treaty established 20 years ago after the border wars. To the east, neutral territory claimed by no pack, governed by general interpack law. To the south, the Moonridge Pack, she kept her voice neutral, with whom we have no formal treaty, but maintain peaceful relations through trade agreements. And to the west? Garrett prompted. To the west are the Forbidden Peaks, claimed by no pack because the terrain is considered too dangerous for settlement. By tradition, it serves as a buffer zone. Correct, Garrett nodded, something like approval in his eyes. The questions continued. Rowan asked about pack finances and resource management. Isla questioned her on territorial dispute resolution. Thomas Ironwood, the quiet weapons master, asked about the properties of various metals used in weapon making, a trick question, since it seemed unrelated to pack knowledge, but Sarah remembered enough from helping her grandmother identify tools to answer adequately. An hour passed. Then 2. Sarah's throat grew dry from talking, but she hadn't failed a single question yet. She could see the frustration building on Helena's face, the growing respect on Garrett's. The crowd had gone quiet, leaning forward to hear every question and answer. Healing question, Helena said abruptly. A pack member is bitten by a silver-tipped arrow. What's your immediate treatment? Silver poison to werewolves. Deadly, if not treated quickly. Sarah's mind raced through Thomas's lessons back in Moonridge, and the healing texts she'd studied. First, shift the victim to human form if possible. Healing is faster in human form. Second, remove the arrow but don't pull straight back. Silver barbs often break off inside the wound. Cut around it if necessary. Third, pack the wound with yarrow to slow bleeding and draw out poison. Fourth, create a poultice of activated charcoal and honey to draw out remaining silver. Fifth, keep the victim hydrated and monitored for silver sickness, fever, seizures, organ failure. She paused, then added, and pray, because silver poisoning has a 30% fatality rate, even with perfect treatment. Mira, standing in the crowd, nodded approvingly. Helena looked like she'd bitten into something sour. Correct. The trial continued. 3 hours in, Sarah felt her concentration wavering. The questions grew more obscure, more technical. She stumbled slightly on a question about ancient succession laws, catching herself just in time to provide an adequate if not perfect answer. Not a failure. Not yet. Final question, Garrett announced, and Sarah's heart leaped. Final question meant she'd made it this far without 3 failures. This one comes from all of us. The council members exchanged glances. Even Helena nodded. You've proven you can memorize facts, Garrett said. Now prove you understand what it means to be part of this pack. In your own words, what is Shadow Peak's greatest strength, and its greatest weakness? Not a factual question, an opinion. A trap, because any answer could offend someone. Sarah took a breath, thinking carefully. The crowd held its breath with her. Shadow Peak's greatest strength, she said slowly, is that you demand excellence from everyone. You don't coddle weakness or accept excuses. You've built a pack of warriors who can survive anything because you've taught them they have to. She paused, meeting each council member's eyes. Your greatest weakness is that same strength, taken too far. You're so focused on being hard that you sometimes forget to be kind. You test everyone so ruthlessly that you might break someone who just needs time to grow into their strength. Her voice grew firmer. I'm that someone. I'm the wolf you would have discarded as useless. But I'm also the wolf who got back up 15 times in the training yard, who spent 2 days studying until my eyes burned, who will keep fighting for my place here no matter how many times you knock me down. Your weakness is that you almost missed what I could become because you were too focused on what I am. Silence crashed over the hall. Sarah had just criticized Shadow Peak, their traditions, their methods, their pride in front of the entire pack. It was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. Garrett stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he began to smile. Well, he said. That's certainly an answer. Is it correct? Sarah asked, because she genuinely didn't know. There is no correct answer to an opinion question, Helena snapped. But it's honest, Garrett interrupted. And it shows understanding of who we are. Both our light and shadow. He looked at the other council members. I vote to pass her on the second trial. Agreed, said Rowan. Agreed, said Isla. Agreed, said Thomas Ironwood quietly. All eyes turned to Helena. She looked like she wanted to refuse, to find some technicality that would fail Sarah despite everything, but she was trapped by the council's own rules. Agreed. She finally bit out. She passes. Garrett stood. Sarah Thornbrook has passed the second trial through demonstration of knowledge and wisdom. She has earned the right to attempt the third and final trial. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some grumbling, all surprised. Sarah swayed on her feet, exhausted beyond measure. 3 hours of mental combat had drained her as thoroughly as Kara's fists. Darian was there suddenly, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. You did it, he murmured, and she heard genuine pride in his voice. One more, Sarah whispered back. One more trial. One more, he agreed. But as he guided her from the hall, past the staring pack members and the frustrated Helena, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, if the combat trial had tested her body and the knowledge trial had tested her mind, what could possibly be left for the third trial? What did endurance mean in a pack like Shadow Peak? She had a feeling she was about to find out, and that terrified her more than either of the previous trials combined. You're absolutely right. Chapter 7 wrapped up too conclusively with the epilogue and the end. Let me rewrite Chapter 7 to remove the premature ending and create proper flow into Chapter 8. Chapter 7. The Final Trial. Sarah had 1 day to recover before the third trial. 1 day to prepare for endurance, whatever that meant in Shadow Peak's brutal terms. It's not physical, Darian explained as they walked through the packlands the morning after her knowledge trial. He'd insisted she needed fresh air, needed to see more of the territory that might become her home. The combat trial tested your body. This tests something deeper. My spirit? Sarah guessed, watching pack members train in the distance. Some nodded to her as they passed, not friendly, but acknowledging. A change from the open hostility of days before. Your will. Your ability to endure what breaks most wolves. Darian's jaw tightened. I won't lie to you, it's the worst of the 3 trials. The one that makes wolves who pass the first two willingly leave. Fear coiled in Sarah's stomach. What happens during it? You'll be isolated, alone in the wilderness for 3 days and nights with nothing but the clothes on your back. You have to survive and make it back to Packlands by the third dawn. That doesn't sound so terrible. I know basic survival. That's not the hard part. Darian stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The hard part is that you'll be given a choice on the second night. The council will send someone with an offer. Come back now. Admit you can't handle Shadow Peak, and leave with dignity. Or stay out there alone and prove you belong. Understanding dawned. It's a test of commitment. They want to see if I'll quit. Most do, when you're cold, hungry, alone in the dark with nothing but your thoughts. He shook his head. Doubt becomes louder than any physical pain. The question becomes, is this pack worth it? Is this life worth suffering for? And if I come back early? The bond dissolves. You leave. We both go on with our lives as if this never happened. The casualness in his voice stung, even though Sarah knew he was just being practical. Their bond was one of convenience, not love. Of course he'd move on easily. But if I stay? She asked. If you stay and make it back on the third dawn, you're accepted. Fully. No more trials, no more questions. You become Pack. Everything she'd wanted, everything she'd fought for, just 3 days away, 3 days alone in hostile territory, fighting her own doubts and fears. When does it start? Tonight. Darian resumed walking. At sunset, you'll be escorted to the boundary and released. From there, you're on your own. Sarah's pulse quickened. Tonight. No more time to prepare. They walked in silence for a while, Sarah memorizing the terrain where water sources might be, which plants were edible, where shelter could be found, survival knowledge from her grandmother's teachings. Things she'd never thought she'd need. Sarah. Darian's voice pulled her from her thoughts. The mate bond will be strained during the trial. You'll feel disconnected, alone in a way that's hard to describe. Will it hurt? Yes. His honesty was both comforting and terrifying. Like part of you is missing. That's intentional, another layer of the test. Can you endure not just physical isolation, but the emotional pain of separation from your mate? Even though we barely know each other? The bond doesn't care about logic. It just knows you're supposed to be together. He stopped again, this time at a cliff edge overlooking the valley. I need you to understand something. If you choose to quit, I won't think less of you. This pack asks too much sometimes. I know that. But you need a mate before the Autumn Council. I'll find another way. His amber eyes met hers. Don't stay out there just for me. Stay because you want this life. Because Shadow Peak is where you choose to be. The words settled over Sarah like a blanket. Heavy, warm, significant. He was giving her permission to quit. To walk away without guilt. Which somehow made her more determined to stay. I'm not quitting, she said firmly. I didn't survive Kara's fists and Helena's questions just to give up in the woods. Darian's expression softened, that rare, genuine smile she'd only seen a handful of times. I was hoping you'd say that. Sunset came too quickly. The entire pack gathered at the boundary to watch Sarah's departure tradition, Darian explained, so everyone could witness the trial's beginning. Sarah stood at the edge of Packlands wearing simple clothes, no supplies, no weapons, nothing but herself and her determination. Garrett stepped forward with the formal words. Sarah Thornbrook, you face the third trial endurance. 3 days alone in the wilderness. Return by the third dawn and claim your place among us. Fail, and you leave Shadow Peak forever. I understand. Then go. May the moon goddess guide your path. Sarah looked back once, finding Darian in the crowd. Their eyes met, and she felt the mate bond pulse between them one last time before distance began to strain it. Then she turned and walked into the wilderness alone. Day 1. The first day was almost manageable. Sarah found a stream within an hour, following deer trails through the dense forest. She drank deeply, knowing hydration was critical. Then she focused on shelter, finding a rocky overhang that would protect her from wind and rain. She gathered pine boughs for insulation, built a small fire using techniques her father had taught her before he died. The physical tasks kept her mind occupied, kept the creeping loneliness at bay. But as darkness fell, and the forest came alive with night sounds, isolation set in. Sarah sat by her fire, arms wrapped around her knees, and felt the mate bond aching in her chest. It wasn't painful yet, just a dull throb, like a bruise beginning to form. She could feel Darian's presence dimly, miles away, and the distance hurt more than she'd expected. They barely knew each other. This was a practical arrangement, nothing more. So why did separation feel like losing something precious? She tried to sleep, but managed only fitful dozing, jerking awake at every crack of branches, every distant howl. Not Shadow Peak wolves, something wilder, more dangerous. The neutral territory held threats. Pack wolves didn't face. Dawn came as a relief. Day 2. Hunger gnawed at Sarah's belly. She'd found berries, testing each carefully for poison, and managed to catch a fish in the stream using a makeshift spear. Not enough food, but enough to keep functioning. The mate bond ached worse now. A constant pull back toward Shadow Peak, back toward Darian. Sarah caught herself walking in that direction twice before forcing herself to stop. Not yet. She had to last until the third dawn. The isolation was worse than hunger, worse than cold or fatigue. Humans, even werewolves, were pack animals. Being alone went against every instinct, every need for connection and community. Sarah talked to herself just to hear a voice, sang songs her grandmother had taught her, anything to fill the oppressive silence. As evening approached, she saw them, 2 wolves on the ridge above her shelter. Not attacking, just watching. Shadow Peak wolves, she realized. Observers, making sure she didn't die out here, but not interfering. Knowing they were there made the loneliness worse somehow. So close but unreachable. Night fell. Sarah huddled by her fire, shivering despite the flames. The temperature had dropped sharply, and her inadequate clothing provided little protection. Then she heard footsteps. A figure emerged from the darkness, Helena, carrying a pack, and wearing a sympathetic expression that looked alien on her sharp features. "Sarah," Helena said softly, "I've come to offer you a choice." Here it was. The moment Darian had warned her about. "You've proven yourself," Helena continued, settling near the fire. 2 trials passed, 2 days alone out here. No one questions your courage anymore. You can come back now. Leave Shadow Peak with honor. Find a pack that won't demand so much from you. She opened the pack, revealing food, water, warm clothes. Or you can take these supplies and stay until dawn tomorrow. No one needs to know I helped you. We'll say you endured on your own. The temptation was crushing. Food, warmth, an end to this nightmare. But Sarah heard the trap beneath the kindness. Taking the supplies would be cheating. Accepting help meant failing the trial just as surely as quitting early. "Why are you really here?" Sarah asked, her voice rough from disuse. Helena's mask slipped. "Because I want you to fail. Because you don't deserve my alpha, don't deserve Shadow Peak." She leaned forward. "But I'm also practical. You've impressed people. If you pass this trial, you'll have influence. So I'm offering you an out that benefits us both. You leave with dignity. I get you gone, and Darian finds a proper mate. A mate like your daughter? My daughter is strong, powerful, everything an alpha needs. Except she's not the one he chose." Sarah met Helena's eyes. "And I'm not quitting. You're shivering so hard you can barely speak. You haven't eaten a real meal in 2 days. The mate bond is tearing you apart." Helena's voice turned sharp. "Pride will kill you out here, girl. Then I'll die proud." Sarah stood, her legs shaking but holding. "Take your supplies and your false sympathy and leave. I'm staying until the third dawn." For a long moment, Helena stared at her. Then she laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're either the bravest wolf I've ever met, or the most foolish." She shouldered her pack. "I suppose we'll find out which by morning." She disappeared into the darkness, leaving Sarah alone again. The night stretched endlessly. Sarah's fire burned low. She gathered more wood with numb fingers, fed the flames, and tried not to think about warm beds and hot food and Darian's solid presence. The mate bond screamed now, actual pain radiating through her chest. Was Darian feeling this too? Did he lie awake in the pack house, hurting the same way? Did it matter if he was? Sarah wrapped her arms around herself and endured. Day 3. Dawn. Sarah wasn't sure she'd actually slept, or just passed in and out of consciousness. Gray light filtered through the trees, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then it hit her, the third dawn. She'd made it. She had to get back to Packlands. Standing took 3 attempts. Her body had decided overnight that moving was optional, but Sarah forced herself upright, stamped out the remains of her fire, and began the journey back. Her sense of direction was usually good, but exhaustion and hunger made everything hazy. The mate bond helped. That aching pull toward Darien was a compass pointing home. Home. When had she started thinking of Shadow Peak as home? The sun climbed higher. Sarah stumbled over roots, caught herself on trees, and kept moving. 1 foot forward, then the other. Again. Again. She lost track of time. Lost track of everything except the need to keep moving. Then she heard them voices. The sound of Packlands. Sarah emerged from the tree line and saw them. The entire pack gathered at the boundary, waiting. Darien stood at the front, his face carved from stone but his eyes burning as they found her. She'd made it. Sarah took 3 more steps onto pack territory, and her legs finally gave out. Strong arms caught her. Darien, somehow there instantly. I've got you, he murmured. You made it. You're home. Garrett's voice boomed over the crowd. Sarah Thornbrook has endured 3 days alone and returned at the 3rd dawn. She has passed the final trial. He paused, and when he spoke again, there was genuine warmth in his voice. Welcome to Shadow Peak, Sarah Ashford. Welcome home, Ashford. Not Thornbrook. Her mate's name, officially hers now. The pack erupted into howls, the traditional celebration for a new member. Not all the voices were enthusiastic, but enough were genuine that tears stung Sarah's eyes. You did it, Darien said against her hair, holding her upright. I didn't think I hoped, but I wasn't sure you'd last. Not quitting is kind of my thing now, Sarah managed, her voice breaking. He laughed, actually laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Yeah, I noticed. Mira appeared with blankets and soup. Kara pushed through the crowd, and Sarah tensed, but the warrior's expression wasn't hostile. You're tougher than you look, little runt, Kara said. Anyone who endures 3 days alone and walks back on their own feet has earned respect. She held out her hand. Welcome to the pack. Sarah stared at the offered hand for a moment, then took it. Kara's grip was firm but not crushing. Thank you, Sarah whispered. More pack members came forward, introducing themselves, offering congratulations, some grudging but present. Even Helena approached, her expression sour but resigned. You passed, Helena said stiffly. That makes you pack. I won't forget my opposition to you. But I won't undermine you either. That's not our way. It wasn't friendship, but it was acceptance. Sarah would take it. The celebration began as the pack led her back to the settlement. Food was being prepared, fires lit for the welcoming feast. Sarah walked on, shaking legs, supported by Darien, and let herself feel it relief, triumph, and the overwhelming sense of finally belonging somewhere. But as the day wore on, and Sarah regained her strength, she couldn't shake a nagging feeling. The trials were over, yes. She'd been accepted into Shadow Peak, but real life was just beginning. And something in the way some pack members watched her, not hostile, but calculating, told her that passing the trials was only the first test. Living up to being an alpha's mate, that would be the real challenge. Chapter 8. The challenge. Winter arrived early in Shadow Peak territory. 2 weeks had passed since Sarah's acceptance into the pack, and she was still adjusting to her new role. Being an alpha's mate came with responsibilities she hadn't anticipated, mediating disputes, attending council meetings, representing Shadow Peak at interpack gatherings. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Sarah woke to find frost coating the windows, her breath misting in the cold air. Beside her, Darien still slept, a rare sight, since he usually rose before dawn. She took a moment to study him in the gray morning light, still marveling at how much had changed. The mate bond thrummed steadily between them now, growing warmer with each passing day. Not the explosive, fated mate connection of legends, but something they were building together through countless small moments. Shared meals, late-night conversations, his hand finding hers during pack meetings, her learning to read his silences. Darian's eyes opened, amber and alert immediately. You're staring. You're stareable, Sarah countered, making him huff a laugh. That's not a word. It is now. She stretched, wincing at the soreness in her shoulders. Yesterday's training with Kara had been brutal. The warrior had taken Sarah on as a personal project, determined to make her at least marginally competent in combat. How are the ribs? Darian asked, sitting up. Only moderately screaming. Sarah had discovered that while she'd never be a warrior like Kara, she could learn to defend herself adequately. More importantly, the regular training had built muscle and stamina she'd never possessed in Moonridge. A sharp knock interrupted their morning. Darian frowned. Visitors this early usually meant trouble. Enter, he called. Garrett pushed through the door, his expression grim. We have a situation. Council meeting in 10 minutes. What kind of situation? Darian was already moving, pulling on clothes with practiced efficiency. The kind with teeth. Garrett's eyes flicked to Sarah. You should come too. This concerns you directly. Dread coiled in Sarah's stomach as she dressed quickly. Situations that concerned her specifically were never good. The council chamber was tense when they arrived. All 5 members present, plus Kara and several senior pack members. Everyone looked worried. Alpha Darian, Sarah. Helena began without preamble. We've received a formal challenge. From who? Darian's voice went dangerously quiet. Alpha Royce of the Iron Ridge Pack. Garrett slid a sealed letter across the table. He's invoking the ancient right of contest. Sarah watched Darian's face go stone cold as he read the letter. His jaw clenched, the only sign of emotion. This is ridiculous, he said finally. The right of contest hasn't been invoked in 50 years. What is it? Sarah asked, looking between the council members. What's the right of contest? Rowan, the finance keeper, spoke up. Ancient pack law. If an alpha takes a mate from outside the pack, any unmated alpha from a neighboring territory can challenge the bond within the first month. They claim the outsider mate for themselves through combat. Sarah's blood ran cold. Challenge the bond? You mean, he wants to fight Darian for you, Kara said bluntly. Winner takes the mate. It's barbaric, but it's legal under the old laws. I don't get a say in this? Anger sparked through Sarah's fear. I'm just property to be won? According to the old laws, yes, Helena said, and there was something almost sympathetic in her expression. The right of contest comes from a time when alliances were forged through forced matings. It's outdated, but it's still technically enforceable. Darian slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. I won't honor this. Royce can take his challenge. And, if you refuse, Shadow Peak is labeled Oathbreakers, Garrett interrupted firmly. Every pack in the region will have grounds to declare us outcast. We'll lose all trading rights, all treaties, all protection under interpack law. So we're trapped, Sarah said quietly. Yes. Garrett met her eyes. I'm sorry, Sarah, but Darian will have to fight. Sarah's mind raced. She'd heard of Alpha Royce. Iron Ridge Pack was known for its brutality, and Royce himself had a reputation for cruelty. He'd gone through 3 mates already, each one dying under mysterious circumstances, and now he wanted her. When? Darian asked, his voice deadly calm. 3 days from now. Neutral territory, witnessed by representatives from all neighboring packs. Garrett paused. It's to the death, Darian. Or until one alpha yields, but Royce won't yield. Neither will I. Darian's amber eyes burned. He's been looking for an excuse to challenge me for years. This isn't about Sarah, it's about taking Shadow Peak. Actually, Helena said slowly. According to the letter, if Royce wins, he only claims Sarah. Shadow Peak remains yours. That's the terms he set. Something cold slithered down Sarah's spine. Why would he want me specifically? He doesn't even know me. Because you're the weak point. Isla, the territory manager, said matter-of-factly. You're an outsider, a former runt, and you've only been in Shadow Peak 2 weeks. Royce sees you as an easy target. Humiliate Darian by taking his mate, weaken his standing among the packs. It's a power play, Darian agreed grimly. And a smart one. If I lose you, I look weak. Other alphas will start circling, looking for more vulnerabilities. Sarah felt sick. She'd become a liability, exactly what she'd feared. Her presence was putting Darian and the entire pack at risk. There has to be another way, she said desperately. What if I dissolve the bond myself? Voluntarily? No. Darian's response was immediate and sharp. Absolutely not. But if it would protect, I said no. He turned to face her fully, his expression fierce. You fought too hard to be here. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself because some brute thinks he can intimidate us. The right of contest allows for a champion, Thomas Ironwood spoke up for the first time. Darian doesn't have to fight personally. He can name someone to fight in his place. Who would be strong enough? Kara asked. Royce is massive. He outweighs most of us by 50 pounds, and he's a vicious fighter. I'll fight him myself, Darian said flatly. No one else risks their life for my mate. The possessiveness in his voice sent warmth through Sarah, despite the dire circumstances. He wasn't going to abandon her, wasn't going to let her be taken. But could he win? What are Royce's chances? Sarah asked Garrett directly. Honestly, the old alpha considered for a long moment. In a fair fight? Darian wins. He's faster, smarter, more controlled. He paused. But Royce doesn't fight fair. He'll use every dirty trick, every advantage, and he's bigger, has longer reach. It'll be close. Too close. Sarah could read it in everyone's faces. They were worried. Really worried. I need to see him, Sarah said suddenly. Before the fight, I need to meet Alpha Royce. Absolutely not, Darian said. Why not? If he's so determined to claim me, I want to look him in the eye. Understand what we're dealing with. Sarah's mind was already working. Knowledge is power, right? Maybe I can find something, a weakness, a tell, anything that might help. Or he'll intimidate you, break your spirit before the fight even begins, Helena countered. That's what he wants. Then I won't let him. Sarah stood straighter. I survived 3 trials to be here. I can handle meeting the alpha who thinks I'm weak enough to steal. Kara laughed suddenly, sharp and approving. I like that fire. Let her go. Worst case, she learns nothing. Best case. She rattles him by showing she's not afraid. It's too dangerous, Darian insisted. Everything about this situation is dangerous. Sarah shot back. At least let me try to help. I'm not going to sit here doing nothing while you fight for my life. Their eyes locked, amber meeting brown, and Sarah felt the mate bond pulse between them. She pushed every ounce of determination through it, letting him feel her resolve. Finally, Darian exhaled sharply. Fine, but I'm coming with you, and Kara, and a full security detail. Deal. Garrett stood. I'll send word to Royce that you're requesting a meeting. He'll probably agree. Alphas like him enjoy showing off their dominance. He looked at Sarah with something like respect. You've got courage, girl. Let's hope it's enough. As the council dispersed, Sarah felt Darian's hand find hers, squeezing gently. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Sarah squeezed back. You've fought for me since the moment we met. It's time I fought for us too. His expression softened. When did you get so brave? The moment a giant alpha told me to act like I was his. Sarah managed a small smile. Turns out, pretending to be brave long enough makes it real. Darian pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. If anything happens to you, nothing will. You're going to win this fight, and we're going to have a very boring, peaceful winter. She said it with more confidence than she felt. But as they stood together in the empty council chamber, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change again. She'd fought to join Shadow Peak. Now she'd have to fight to stay. The meeting with Royce was scheduled for the next day, neutral territory halfway between Shadow Peak and Iron Ridge. Sarah spent the evening preparing, asking Garrett about Royce's history, studying what little information they had about him, trying to find any advantage she could. He's been alpha for 15 years, Garrett told her over dinner. Took the position by killing his predecessor in a challenge. Since then, he's ruled Iron Ridge with an iron fist. 3 mates. all dead within 2 years of bonding. Officially, accidents. Unofficially. He shook his head. He killed them. Sarah finished. We can't prove it. But yes, that's what most believe. Garrett's expression was grave. If Darian loses, he won't. But if he does, you'd be bonded to a murderer. A brute who sees mates as possessions. Garrett leaned forward. There are ways out, Sarah. Ways to escape before the bond fully forms. We could help you disappear, give you a new identity. No. Sarah's voice was firm. I won't run. And I won't let Darian fight alone, even if I can't be in the arena with him. Garrett studied her for a long moment, then nodded. You really have become one of us, haven't you? That stubborn Shadow Peak pride. Is that what this is? Sarah asked with a wry smile. That, and genuine courage. Garrett stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow you meet the monster. You'll need your strength. That night, Sarah lay awake beside Darian, listening to his steady breathing, and trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Can't sleep? Darian's voice rumbled in the darkness. Too much thinking. He rolled to face her, his eyes gleaming in the moonlight filtering through the window. What are you thinking about? That I never expected my life to include alpha combat challenges and possible death by murderous brute. Sarah tried for humor, but it fell flat. Me neither. Darian reached out, tucking hair behind her ear. I thought this would be simple. Political arrangement, mutual benefit. Everyone moves on with their lives. Instead, I'm fighting to keep the most stubborn, brilliant, infuriating wolf I've ever met. His voice softened. And I'm terrified of losing. The admission hung between them raw and honest. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. The mate bond. She whispered. It's changed. Hasn't it? Yeah. Darian's thumb traced her cheekbone. Somewhere between you bleeding in the training yard and refusing to quit in the wilderness, it stopped being convenient and started being real. Real enough to die for. Real enough to kill for. His eyes hardened. Royce won't take you. I won't let him. Sarah believed him. But she also knew that confidence didn't guarantee victory. Promise me something, she said. Anything. If something goes wrong, if somehow Royce wins, promise me you'll let me go. Don't do anything stupid trying to get me back. Protect Shadow Peak first. No. Darian. No, he repeated firmly. I'm not promising that. If he takes you, I'll burn Iron Ridge to the ground and salt the earth. That's my promise. It should have scared her, the violence in his voice, the absolute certainty. Instead, it made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. Okay, she whispered. Then I promise you something. I won't go easily. If Royce wins, he'll have to drag me away, kicking and screaming. And I'll make his life hell every single day until you come for me. Darian's laugh was rough. That's my girl. Your girl. Sarah repeated, testing the words. Yeah. I think I am. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of everything they hadn't said yet. Sarah kissed him back, pouring her fear and hope and determination into it. Tomorrow, she'd face the monster who wanted to steal her life. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged. Chapter 9. The Monster. The neutral ground was a clearing in the forest, marked by ancient standing stones that predated any pack's memory. Sarah arrived with Darian, Kara, and 6 of Shadow Peak's most trusted warriors. The air was crisp with early winter cold, and her breath misted as she stepped from the vehicle. Alpha Royce was already there. He stood in the center of the clearing, massive and imposing. Sarah had thought Darian was large, but Royce dwarfed him. 7 feet of pure muscle, with a scarred face that spoke of countless battles. His eyes were pale blue, cold and calculating as they fixed on her. So this is the prize, Royce said, his voice a rumble like distant thunder. The little runt that's caused so much fuss. Sarah felt Darian tense beside her, but she stepped forward before he could respond. I'm Sarah Ashford, and I'm nobody's prize. Royce laughed, a sound that made her skin crawl. Ashford. You've taken his name already. How sweet. He moved closer, circling her like a predator. Tell me, little runt, does he keep you warm at night? Does he make you feel protected? He makes me feel valued. Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. Something I doubt you understand. The smile dropped from Royce's face. Careful, girl. You're not pack yet, not truly. And disrespect to an alpha has consequences. I'm here because you challenged my mate bond. Because you think you can take what's not yours through violence. Sarah held his gaze, refusing to look away despite every instinct, screaming at her to submit. That sounds like disrespect to me. Royce's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. Bold words from such a weak creature. I could snap you in half. Then why haven't you? Sarah took a step closer, her heart hammering but her feet steady. Why challenge Darian at all? If you're so confident in your strength, why not just take what you want? Because that's not how this works, Kara said from behind Sarah, her voice hard. Even brutes like you have to follow pack law sometimes. Royce's attention shifted to Kara, and something ugly crossed his face. Kara Steelclaw. Still playing warrior in Shadow Peak? I remember when you begged to join Iron Ridge. What was it I said? Oh yes, you weren't strong enough. And yet here I am, head warrior of a pack that doesn't need to brutalize its members into submission. Kara's smile was all teeth. Funny how that works. The tension ratcheted higher. Royce's warriors, 6 of them, all massive and scarred, moved closer. Shadow Peak's warriors responded in kind. The clearing felt like a powder keg waiting for a spark. Enough. Darian's voice cut through the hostility. Royce, you wanted to meet my mate. You've met her. Now let's discuss terms. Terms? Royce turned his attention back to Darian. The terms are simple. We fight in 2 days. I win. She comes with me. You win. I leave Shadow Peak alone. Standard right of contest. And if you lose, you forfeit any future claims on Sarah or Shadow Peak territory, Darian added. Complete and permanent. Agreed. Royce's smile was predatory. Though I won't lose, I haven't lost a challenge in 15 years. There's a first time for everything, Sarah said quietly. Royce looked at her again, really looked at her this time. Sarah felt his gaze like ice water, searching for weakness, for fear. She forced herself to stand tall, to meet his eyes without flinching. You've got spirit, Royce said finally. I'll enjoy breaking it. You'll never get the chance, Darian growled, moving to stand beside Sarah. We'll see. Royce gestured to his warriors. 2 days, Ashford. Don't be late. I'd hate for you to forfeit by cowardice. He shifted, then a massive gray wolf with eyes like winter, and his pack followed suit. They disappeared into the forest within seconds, leaving Shadow Peak alone in the clearing. Sarah's legs nearly gave out. She'd held herself together through sheer willpower, but now that Royce was gone, fear crashed over her in waves. You okay? Kara asked, steadying her with a hand on her shoulder. I just stared down a murderer and lived. I'm processing. Sarah's voice shook slightly. You did more than stare him down, one of the warriors said, a young male named Finn. You challenged him. Nobody challenges Royce. She's either the bravest or craziest wolf I've ever met, another warrior added with something like admiration. Both, Kara said firmly. Definitely both. Darian pulled Sarah close, and she felt him trembling slightly. Don't ever do that again. When you step toward him, I had to show him I'm not afraid. You should be afraid. He's killed 3 mates, Sarah. 3. Darian's voice was rough with emotion. If he even touched you. He didn't, and he won't. Sarah pulled back enough to look up at him. But I learned something. What? He's arrogant, overconfident. He thinks winning is inevitable. Sarah's mind raced, replaying every moment of the encounter. He barely looked at you, Darian. All his attention was on me, on proving how dominant he is, how inevitable his victory is. That's just posturing, Kara said, but she looked thoughtful. Maybe. Or maybe it's a genuine blind spot. Sarah looked at Darian. He's so confident in his physical superiority that he doesn't consider strategy. He fights like a battering ram, overwhelming force, no finesse. You got all that from 10 minutes? Finn asked, impressed. I got it from the way he moved, the way he talked, the way he dismissed everything that wasn't direct confrontation. Sarah's grandmother had taught her to observe people, to read the truth beneath their words. He's strong, yes, But he's also predictable. Darian's expression shifted from worry to calculation. If he fights the way you think he does, you can use it against him, Sarah finished. You're faster, smarter. If you don't let him dictate the fight, if you make him chase you, wear him down, he'll get frustrated, make mistakes. Darian's eyes gleamed. And one mistake is all I need. Kara was nodding now. We have 2 days to prepare. Let's make them count. They returned to Shadow Peak immediately, and Darian threw himself into training with single-minded focus. Kara drilled him relentlessly, focusing on speed and evasion rather than direct confrontation. Sarah watched from the sidelines, taking mental notes, looking for any advantage they could exploit. That evening, she found Garrett in the pack library, searching through ancient texts. Looking for something specific? She asked. Garrett glanced up, his scarred face weary. Precedents, past challenges under the right of contest, trying to find if anyone's ever successfully defended against someone like Royce. And most defenders lose. The challengers invoke the right specifically because they're confident they can win. He closed the book with a heavy thud. I'm sorry, Sarah. I wish I had better news. Sarah sat across from him, thinking. Garrett, what happens if the fight is interrupted? If something prevents it from being completed? Such as? I don't know. What if I wasn't there? If the mate being challenged doesn't witness the fight, does it still count? Garrett frowned. Traditionally, the mate must be present. It's part of the challenge the victor claims their prize immediately. But he pulled out another text, flipping through pages. There's no explicit requirement in the law itself, just tradition. So if I wasn't there, the fight could proceed. But the immediate claiming couldn't happen, theoretically. But Royce would just hunt you down afterward if he won. Garrett studied her carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that traditions become laws because nobody questions them. But if we're dealing with ancient laws nobody's invoked in 50 years, maybe there are loopholes nobody's considered. Sarah leaned forward. What if we could disqualify Royce before the fight even begins? On what grounds? That's what I need to figure out. Sarah's mind raced through everything she'd learned about pack law. There has to be something. Some requirement he's not meeting. Some technicality we can exploit. Garrett's expression shifted to something like hope. You know, for someone who was considered the weakest wolf in her old pack, you think like an alpha. I think like someone who's tired of being underestimated. Sarah stood. Keep looking through those texts. Anything about challenge requirements, witness rules, grounds for disqualification. I'll do the same. They worked through the night, poring over dusty volumes that hadn't been opened in decades. Pack law, ancient treaties, historical precedents. Sarah's eyes burned from reading by candlelight, but she refused to stop. Somewhere in these pages was the answer. It had to be. As dawn broke, Sarah found it. A single paragraph in a text, so old the pages crumbled at her touch. Requirements for invoking the right of contest. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood correctly, then ran to find Garrett. He was asleep at his desk, head pillowed on an open book. Sarah shook him awake. Garrett, look at this. He blinked blearily at the page she thrust in front of him. Then his eyes widened. Moon goddess above, he breathed. How did we miss this? Because nobody's invoked the right of contest in 50 years, and this book is probably twice that old. Sarah could barely contain her excitement. It's right there. The challenger must prove they can provide for the mate they're claiming. Specifically, they must demonstrate adequate territory, resources, and stable pack structure. Royce has all that. Iron Ridge is a large pack with substantial territory. But look at the next line. Sarah pointed. The challenger must also prove no prior claims exist on their ability to mate. Meaning no existing mates, no broken bonds, no deaths of previous mates under suspicious circumstances. Garrett finished, sitting up straight. Sarah, if we can prove Royce killed his previous mates, he's disqualified from claiming a new one under the right of contest. Can we prove it? Can we prove it? I don't know, but we have 2 days to try. Garrett was already moving, gathering papers. We need to contact wolves who knew his mates, get testimonies, build a case. Will the challenge council accept it? If we present evidence before the fight begins, they'll have to consider it. It's law. Garrett gripped her shoulders. Sarah, you might have just saved Darian's life. And your own. Relief and hope warred with caution in Sarah's chest. We still need proof. Real, undeniable proof. Then let's find it. They woke the council. Within an hour, messengers were dispatched to neighboring packs, to anyone who might have information about Royce's dead mates. Darian was brought in and briefed, his expression shifting from confusion to fierce hope. If this works, he started. It has to work, Sarah said firmly. Because I'm not letting you die for me, and I'm definitely not becoming Royce's next victim. Darian pulled her close. Have I mentioned lately that you're extraordinary? Not in the last few hours. Consider it mentioned. He kissed her forehead. You might have just beaten a challenge before it even began. Don't celebrate yet. We still need evidence. But Sarah allowed herself a small smile. Though I have to admit, I'm getting really good at this whole refusing to lose thing. It's your best quality, Kara said from the doorway. She'd been training all night and looked exhausted. Though, if we're calling off the fight, someone should probably tell my muscles. They're very confused about why I pushed Darian so hard. We're not calling anything off yet, Garrett warned. This is a long shot. Royce has covered his tracks well. Getting anyone to testify against him will be dangerous. Then we make it worth the danger, Sarah said. We offer protection, sanctuary in Shadow Peak for anyone brave enough to speak truth. Whatever it takes. Darian looked at her with something like awe. 2 weeks ago, you were the runt nobody wanted. Now you're strategizing like a born leader. 2 weeks ago, I had nothing to fight for, Sarah corrected. Now I have everything. That changes a person. It did. And as messengers returned throughout the day with whispers of testimony, rumors of evidence, Sarah felt hope building. They had a chance. A real chance. Now they just had to survive long enough to use it. Chapter 10. The Victory. The day of the challenge dawned gray and cold. Sarah woke with Darian's arms wrapped around her, both of them having barely slept. Today would decide everything: their future, their bond, their very lives. Did the last messenger return? Sarah asked quietly. An hour ago. Darian's voice was rough. Garrett has the testimony compiled. 3 witnesses willing to speak against Royce, all former Iron Ridge Pack members who fled after his mates died. It's not perfect evidence, but it's enough to raise serious questions. Will it be enough to disqualify him? We're about to find out. They dressed in formal attire. Sarah in the deep green robes that marked her as Shadow Peak's alpha mate, Darian in the ceremonial leathers of a challenged alpha. The entire pack would travel to neutral territory for the challenge. Win or lose, everyone needed to witness it. The council met them at the pack house entrance. Garrett carried a leather satchel containing all their evidence, testimonies, documents, even a healer's report on one of Royce's mates that suggested poisoning rather than accident. This is going to be ugly, Helena warned. Royce won't take the accusation lightly. Even if we disqualify him from the right of contest, he might challenge anyway. Claim regular combat challenge instead. Then we fight, Darian said simply. But at least it won't be for Sarah. Regular challenges don't have mate claiming attached. Small comfort if you die, Kara muttered, but she fell into step beside them. The journey to neutral territory felt both endless and too short. Sarah sat pressed against Darian in the vehicle, their hands intertwined, the mate bond humming between them. She could feel his fear not for himself, but for her. And her own fear. Sharp and bright, that everything they'd built might shatter today. Whatever happens, Sarah said softly, I want you to know something. Don't. Darian's grip tightened. Don't do goodbyes. We're not losing today. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying thank you. Sarah turned to look at him fully. You chose me when nobody else would. You gave me a chance to prove myself. Even if this all goes wrong. It won't. Even if it does. I've had more real life in these few weeks than in 23 years in Moonridge. So thank you. For seeing something in me worth choosing. Darian's expression cracked the stone facade, falling away to reveal raw emotion. I'm not losing you. I can't. The mate bond, Sarah. It's not convenient anymore. It's not political. "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too." They didn't say the words, didn't need to. Love was in the way he held her, in the way she'd fought for him, in every moment they'd built together. The convoy pulled into the clearing. Dozens of vehicles were already there, representatives from every pack in the region, come to witness the challenge. The standing stones loomed like silent judges, ancient and implacable, and at the center, waiting with his warriors, stood Royce. He looked even more massive in the gray morning light, a mountain of muscle and menace. His cold eyes found Sarah immediately, and he smiled, the expression making her skin crawl. "Ashford," Royce called out. "Ready to lose everything? Ready to expose you for the murderer you are," Darian called back. The clearing went silent. Every wolf present turned to stare. Royce's smile vanished. "Careful with your accusations, pup. I'm careful with the truth." Darian stepped forward, and Garrett moved with him, holding the evidence satchel. "Before this challenge proceeds, we invoke the right of inquiry. We present evidence that Alpha Royce is unfit to claim a mate under the right of contest." "This is outrageous," one of Royce's warriors snarled. "You can't." "We can." Garrett's voice carried across the clearing with the authority of age and experience. "Pack law is clear. If a challenger's fitness is questioned before combat begins, evidence must be heard by neutral arbiters. I am the neutral arbiter," a new voice spoke. An elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd, so old her hair was pure white, her face a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp and her presence commanded instant respect. Sarah recognized her from Darian's descriptions. Elder Moira, the oldest living alpha in the region, retired but still consulted on matters of pack law. "Elder Moira," Royce said with forced respect. "This is unnecessary." "Is it?" Moira's gaze was penetrating. "You've invoked ancient law, Alpha Royce. Ancient law comes with ancient scrutiny." She turned to Garrett. "Present your evidence." Garrett opened the satchel and began pulling out documents. 3 of Alpha Royce's previous mates are dead, all within 2 years of bonding, all under circumstances officially ruled accidental. "Accidents happen," Royce said coldly. "Not 3 times in 15 years, not with the same pattern." Garrett held up the first testimony. Witness 1. Elena Brightwood, former Iron Ridge healer. She treated Royce's first mate before her death. Here's her sworn statement describing symptoms consistent with silver poisoning, not the food poisoning officially recorded. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Silver poisoning was murder slow, agonizing, and unmistakable to trained healers. "She's a liar," Royce spat. "Elena was expelled from my pack for incompetence." "Expelled or fled?" Garrett pulled out another document. Witness 2, Thomas Gray, warrior who served under Royce until 5 years ago. His statement details how Royce's second mate died, pushed from a cliff during a hunt, officially ruled accidental. Thomas saw Royce argue with her minutes before, saw him walk away from the cliff's edge alone. Speculation and lies from disgruntled former pack members. Royce's voice was rising. "This is character assassination." "Then explain the third death." Garrett's voice was steel. Witness 3, Dr. Sarah Chen, human physician who examined Royce's third mate at a neutral clinic after she appeared seeking help. The mate claimed abuse, showed evidence of repeated trauma. Dr. Chen documented everything. He held up a medical report. 1 week later, the mate died. Officially ruled a hunting accident. The silence was deafening. Elder Moira stepped forward and took the documents, reading through each one with methodical care. The minutes stretched like hours. Sarah felt Darian's tension through the bond, felt her own heart hammering against her ribs. Finally, Moira looked up. "Alpha Royce, these allegations are serious. While not definitive proof of murder, they establish a pattern of suspicious deaths that calls into question your fitness to claim another mate." "This is absurd," Royce snarled. "I'm being accused by cowards who fled my pack." "You're being accused by witnesses with documented evidence," Moira corrected firmly. "Evidence that suggests you pose a lethal threat to potential mates. Under the ancient law you invoked, a challenger must prove they can provide safe harbor for the mate they claim. You have not proven this. In fact, evidence suggests the opposite. So what?" Royce's control was slipping, his wolf rising to the surface. You're denying me the challenge? I'm denying you the right of contest, Moira said. You may not claim Sarah Ashford as a mate through challenge. That right is forfeit. Victory surged through Sarah, sweet and sharp. They'd done it. They'd actually… Fine, Royce growled. Then I invoke standard combat challenge. Not for the mate, for the territory. I challenge Darian Ashford for leadership of Shadow Peak Pack. No. The clearing erupted in chaos. This was worse, so much worse. A territorial challenge was to the death. No yielding, no mercy. Winner took the entire pack. You can't. Helena protested. There are protocols, procedures. I'm invoking my right as a neighboring alpha to challenge for territory I believe is being mismanaged, Royce said, his voice cutting through the noise. Shadow Peak has grown too powerful under Ashford. I'm declaring it a threat to regional stability. That's a lie, Kara shouted. You just want revenge because your first plan failed. It's also legal, Elder Moira said reluctantly. Territorial challenges can be invoked if the challenger can demonstrate reasonable cause. Royce's claim of regional instability is thin, but it meets the minimum requirement. Darian's hand found Sarah's, squeezing hard. It's okay, he murmured. This was always a possibility. You'll have to kill him, Sarah whispered. Or he'll kill you. I know. Can you win? Darian looked at her, and in his eyes she saw absolute certainty. Yes. Because I have something worth fighting for. He's just fighting out of spite. Elder Moira raised her hand for silence. The challenge is accepted. Combat will proceed immediately. Shift and fight. The victor claims all. The crowd pulled back, forming a wide circle around the standing stones. Royce was already stripping off his shirt, his scarred torso a testament to decades of violence. Darian did the same, and Sarah saw the difference between them. Royce was larger, but Darian was leaner, more controlled. Remember what we talked about, Sarah said urgently. Don't let him control the fight. Use your speed. I remember. Darian cupped her face in his hands. I love you. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Sarah. Tears stung her eyes. I love you too, so you'd better win, because I'm not done with you yet. He kissed her fierce and quick, then moved to the center of the circle. Royce was waiting, already shifted into his massive gray wolf. He was enormous in wolf form, all teeth and muscle and barely contained rage. Darian shifted. His dark wolf was smaller than Royce's, but moved with liquid grace. He circled slowly, amber eyes calculating, looking for openings. Royce lunged. The battle was brutal from the first moment. Royce fought like Sarah had predicted, overwhelming force, trying to use size and strength to crush his opponent. Darian danced away, teeth finding flesh but never staying still long enough for Royce to pin him. Blood stained the ground within minutes. Sarah watched with her heart in her throat, nails digging into her palms. Every time Royce's jaws snapped close to Darian's throat, she felt the mate bond scream in terror. Every time Darian's teeth found purchase, tearing flesh, she felt grim satisfaction. The fight raged on. 5 minutes became 10, then 15. Royce was tiring, his attacks growing sloppier, his breathing labored. He'd expected a quick victory, overwhelming force crushing opposition. But Darian refused to be crushed. He bled from a dozen wounds but kept moving, kept striking, wearing down his larger opponent like water wearing stone. Come on, Kara muttered beside Sarah. Finish it, Darian, finish it. As if hearing her, Darian changed tactics. Instead of circling away from Royce's next charge, he dove forward under the larger wolf's guard. His teeth found the vulnerable underside of Royce's throat and clamped down. Royce howled, a sound of rage and terror combined. He thrashed wildly, trying to shake Darian off, but Darian's jaws were locked tight. They rolled across the ground, a tangle of fur and blood and desperation. Then Royce went still. Not dead, Sarah could see his sides still heaving, but defeated, unable to continue. Darian released his throat and stepped back, still in wolf form, watching to see if Royce would rise for another attack. Royce shifted back to human, one hand pressed to his bleeding throat. His face was a mask of rage and humiliation. Yield, Elder Moira commanded. Yield or die, Alpha Royce. For a long moment, Sarah thought Royce would choose death over humiliation. His eyes burned with hatred as they fixed on Darien. Then, finally, he spat out the word. Yield. The clearing erupted in howls, Shadow Peak wolves celebrating, others simply acknowledging the victory. Darien shifted back to human, swaying slightly from blood loss and exhaustion. Sarah ran to him, supporting his weight. You did it. You won. We won, he corrected, leaning on her. Your plan saved us before the fight even started. Everything after was just cleanup. Mira was already there with medical supplies, checking Darien's wounds. Nothing critical, but you need stitches. Several of them. Later, Darien said, his eyes on Royce. We settle this first. Elder Moira approached Royce, who was being tended by his own pack members. Alpha Royce, you challenged and lost. Under pack law, you forfeit your right to make any future claims against Shadow Peak or its alpha mate. Do you acknowledge this? I acknowledge it, Royce ground out. He looked at Sarah, and the hatred in his eyes made her step closer to Darien. Enjoy your victory, Runt. It won't last forever. That sounds like a threat, Darien said quietly. It's a promise. Royce stood, despite his wounds. Shadow Peak may have won today, but there are always more challenges, more threats. Your little mate might have been clever once, but cleverness runs out eventually. So does luck, Kara said, moving to stand beside Darien and Sarah. And you've just run out of yours. Leave our territory. Now. Royce's warriors helped him to his vehicle. The Iron Ridge contingent departed in tense silence, leaving the gathered packs to witness the aftermath. Elder Moira approached Darien with something like approval. You fought well, Alpha Ashford. And your mate. She turned to Sarah. Your mate fought even better, using law and evidence instead of claws and teeth. That's wisdom. Thank you, Elder, Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly with relief and delayed fear. Treasure her, Moira told Darien. Mates who can think and fight are rare. Don't waste this gift. I won't, Darien promised. As the packs began to disperse, Shadow Peak's wolves surrounded their alpha and his mate. Garrett clasped Darien's shoulder. Helena offered a rare smile to Sarah. Even wolves who'd been skeptical of her now looked at her with respect. You saved us, one of them said. Your research, your plan, it saved all of us. We saved ourselves, Sarah corrected. Together. That's what packs do. The celebration at Shadow Peak that night was legendary. Fire pits blazed against the winter darkness. Food and drink flowed freely, and stories of the challenge were already being embellished into pack mythology. Sarah sat with Darien away from the main celebration, in a quiet corner where they could finally breathe. His wounds had been stitched and bandaged, and he'd heal completely within days thanks to wolf metabolism. But for now, he looked exhausted and content. I meant what I said, Darien murmured, pulling her close. I love you. Not because of convenience or politics. Because you're brilliant and stubborn and you've changed everything. I love you too, Sarah whispered. Though I have to say, your courting techniques are unconventional. Most alphas don't include death threats and combat challenges in the romance. He laughed, the sound warm against her hair. Most alphas don't get mates who can outthink territorial challengers. Guess we're both special. Special, Sarah agreed, then sobered. Royce's threat though. Do you think he'll come back? Maybe. Probably. Darien's arms tightened around her. But we'll be ready. You taught me that today, that strength isn't just about fighting. It's about thinking, planning, using every advantage we have. We make a good team. The best. He tilted her face up to his. Marry me. Sarah blinked. What? Marry me. Properly. Not just a mate bond for politics, but a real marriage. The whole ceremony. Vows before the moon goddess. Everything. His eyes were earnest. I want everyone to know you're not just my mate. You're my partner, my equal, my choice. Every single day. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. Yes, yes, of course, yes. He kissed her, then deep and slow and full of promise. Around them, the pack celebrated. Above them, the moon shone bright and full. And between them, the mate bond sang with joy. Sarah had started this journey as an unwanted runt, sitting alone at a mating ceremony. Now she was Sarah Ashford, alpha mate, strategist, warrior in her own right, and beloved partner to the most dangerous alpha in 3 territories. She'd been chosen when no one else would. And in being chosen, she'd found herself. The end of her old life. The beginning of everything new. If Sarah's journey from invisible to invaluable has touched your heart, if you believe that our greatest strength lies not in never falling but in rising every single time, then subscribe now. Join a community that knows worth isn't given, it's earned, fought for, and proven through courage that refuses to break. Thank you for witnessing Sarah's transformation. Thank you for believing that even the smallest wolf can change everything. Epilogue. 6 months later. Spring came to Shadow Peak with warmth and new life. Sarah stood in the Great Hall, now redecorated to reflect both Darian's strength and her own growing influence. Maps covered one wall not just of Shadow Peak territory, but of all the neighboring packs, trade routes, alliance possibilities. She'd become Shadow Peak's unofficial diplomat, her ability to think strategically proving invaluable in negotiations. The Moonridge delegation will be here tomorrow, Darian said, entering with papers in hand. Alpha Blackwood is bringing a proposal for expanded trade agreements. And an apology, I hope, Sarah said wryly. Considering how they treated their runt before I left. You're not bitter at all, Darian teased. Just realistic. But Sarah smiled. She'd written to Thomas, her old friend from Moonridge, and maintained that connection. The rest of that pack could think what they wanted. She'd found her real home. A knock at the door interrupted them. Kara entered, followed by a young female Sarah had never seen before. Small, nervous, with healing bruises on her face. Alpha, Sarah, Kara said formally. This is Maya. She's seeking sanctuary. From where? Darian asked, already alert. Iron Ridge. Maya's voice was barely a whisper. I was. Alpha Royce wanted to make me his mate. After you defeated him, he's been worse, more violent. I couldn't stay. Sarah's heart clenched. She crossed to Maya immediately, taking her hands gently. You're safe now. Shadow Peak grants you sanctuary. No one will force you into anything here. But Alpha Royce has no power here, Darian said firmly. You're under our protection now. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. As Kara led Maya away to get settled, Sarah turned to Darian. We need to do something about Iron Ridge, about wolves like Royce who abuse their power. I know. But changing pack law across territories. Darian shook his head. That's a generational fight. Then let's start it. Sarah moved to the maps, her mind already working. We can't save everyone, but we can offer sanctuary to those who escape.